hosting Twitter Spaces about RFK literally since the beginning of his campaign back in April. We used to do them every week. We did them every Monday night at 8:30. And then, of course, I got busy with campaign work. I'm a volunteer organizer, and I just got so busy that I kind of fell out of the habit of doing them every Monday night. But I've missed them, and I've missed the opportunity to sit here and talk with people. So I'm going to have to make myself do this more often because it's really a lot of fun.
Well, please do. And I follow Dr. Hank, Dr. Thorpe, Dr. Poppy. I get on their spaces all of the time to learn more about COVID and the vaccines. And I know there's a lot of Republicans, former Republicans, that are supporting Kennedy. And I read the comments on his YouTube videos. And I think there's a lot of Republicans like me right now. You know, we are really doing our research. He's very refreshing, I have to tell you. And he speaks to the heart, and that's what I love about him. But I will drop down to listeners so you can bring more people up. Thank you so much.
Thanks again, Amanda. That was awesome.
Hey, Lori, this is Jake. I think I fixed my issue.
Okay, yeah, you sound better.
Sorry, but I'm really sorry about that. So what we were talking about was I was talking about President Trump, and President Trump, as I mentioned, had invited Bobby Kennedy to be the chairman of the committee to investigate childhood vaccines, and which he accepted. And then Fauci and Bill Gates told Trump that, it was a big joke. But the challenge is that President Trump owns a significant chunk of Pfizer stock, which in my mind creates like a hardcore conflict of interest financially. And I just think that, if, giving him the benefit of the doubt, and believing that, he didn't really understand what was going on with Operation Warp Speed and stuff. If basically they were able to trick him, then that would make him completely incompetent. Where with RFK is hyper competent with this stuff. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And so this article I wrote is all about this revolving door between Big Pharma and the FDA. And then ironically, in the article I wrote the day before, that actually shows the entire loop. And basically, ironically, the Russians were the ones that figured out exactly what was going on with everything, including Hunter Biden and all that stuff. And basically the way everything's looping through Big Pharma and through the US government to expose it. And of course, you don't hear about that in the mainstream news in the United States either. And it's, as an American, this is extremely disturbing to me. What I'm learning, the deeper I dig, the more disturbing I find all of this to be. And so basically what I'm doing is I'm documenting everything I find and sharing it on RFK USA.
But I think Jay had his hand up. Jay, did you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I was actually gonna respond to something Amanda had said before, but just touching on what you mentioned just now, I agree. The more you dive into the rabbit hole, the more concerning it is. I actually just finished reading a book called One Nation Under Blackmail by Whitney Webb. I don't know if anyone here has heard of her, that book.
Oh, that is a great book. I love that book. I love Whitney.
Yeah, it's a really important read, I think, because it really gives Americans a better idea about the other side of the coin. I think, one problem with politics is money in politics. That's something, Bernie Sanders drew some attention to. But on the other end of that, like Matthew was speaking about before, is you do have the intelligence agencies running a blackmail operation, it seems, like a very organized, detailed blackmail operation that's coercing our politicians into voting in certain ways. So I think, as I was reading the book, I was kind of just thinking to myself, we have, 12 Fast and Furious movies now, but we don't have movies about like like what's been going on with our own history right now. And it's like as I'm reading the book, there's so many stories in there that honestly would make like great movies just by themselves, but it would actually show people what's going on. And I think people need to understand like what's actually happening. It's not just people are getting bribed. Like some of the craziest things that you heard were conspiracies. Back in the day, like they might actually be true, and it's really sad. But the when you actually see the evidence of it, it's it's hard to come to grips with. But on what you were saying, Amanda, about unity in the country, that's the reason why I'm actually attracted to the RFK campaign the most of any of the campaigns right now, because he's the first president, or the first presidential candidate, I should say, I've seen in my lifetime who speaks to both sides the way he does. And he lets people know you're not going to agree with everything that he's saying, but you'll know you're getting the honest truth. And he's fighting for you know he's fighting against the censorship state, in a real way. So, and it's rare to see that on the Democratic side. And just seeing the hypocrisy over the last few years and how much it's come to light in the Democratic Party, how it used to be the party against war, now it's a party for war. Like Trump derangement syndrome, has driven Democrats off the deep end, pretty much. And I'm not a Trump supporter. I didn't support him. I wouldn't vote for him personally because of some of the things that were mentioned on this call and a few others. But all of his ideas, or most of his ideas, top to bottom, it's hard for me to find one I disagree with. He's also the only candidate that has a deep understanding of Bitcoin. So it's not actually just uh, his deep understanding of the pharmaceutical complex, but he has a deeper understanding of many issues, and he's speaking to many issues that a lot of other candidates haven't really touched at all. He's the only candidate I've heard of speak about the quality of food and the issues going on with our food supply, and he's the only one like really coming up with plans to address it. He's someone with there's so many ways. Anyway, I could go on for a long time about why I support his campaign, but he knows the issues themselves better than a lot of the candidates who just have, lobbyists from different companies, like telling them what the companies want, and then pollsters telling them what's popular in the country. And then they campaign on whatever the polls say people want, and then they legislate for what the lobbyists in their ear who are paying the bills tell them to do. So that's kind of what we see happening right now. And because RFK is coming, like is clear about his plans, and he's actually telling people what he wants to do, and we can see he has a deeper understanding of some of the issues, and he's getting to the core of some of these problems. I think if they allow him onto a debate stage, it should be a pretty easy task to dismantle Sleepy Joe. So I'm looking forward to it. So I think from what the few things I've been hearing, it does sound like they might be trying to push Joe Biden out. I saw Joe Rogan was talking about it the other day, actually, how they're leaking all this stuff about his business in Ukraine. Like, so if they're leaking all the stuff about what he's doing in Ukraine, and they're going to slowly try to get him to step aside to let someone else run in, if Kennedy is allowed on the debate stage, I don't really see anyone else in the field, who is willing to speak honestly and could actually uh, put up make a better argument than what he's saying for some of the core issues in the country, which is dismantling the war industrial complex and decoupling industry from government. So he's the best prepared, it seems, to handle those two things. So I'm pretty excited about his campaign. So we'll see what the future holds. I'm hoping they will push Biden aside, because pro-Ukraine is not going to get us anywhere. And the more details that come out and the more we hear about what's happening in Hawaii, the more problems we have on this end, the more frustrated people are going to get with Ukraine. So if the Republican side is running against it and Biden is running for it because he has interest in the country, which is pretty much treason, like they impeach Trump, but Biden is committing treason in broad daylight, and Democrats don't really have much to say. So sorry. I know I'm on a little bit of a rant right now, but
Well, I'm going to
Go
add
ahead.
to that rant because I've got a little rant of my own that I'm going to add to that. Just as the judge in this case, I read you highlights from her ruling tonight, and I'm sure a lot of you had your jaws on the floor as I was reading what the judge wrote. She's basically gaslighting Kennedy in her ruling. She's saying, "Oh, you're not really being censored. It's not really the government behind it. You waited too long, and besides, you might cause people to die or get sick if we allow you to speak on YouTube. You might kill people if you say the wrong thing." And it's just totally gaslighting Kennedy, treating him like a child, like he's an idiot, even though he's a well respected attorney with more than 40 years of practicing in the courtroom and knows exactly what he's doing. And he's brought, I think, a very strong case. I would encourage everyone to go read his original complaint. It's 27 pages. I would advise everyone here to look up the complaints of all the lawsuits he's filed. The lawsuit against Facebook, Meta, Instagram, the Trusted News Initiative, the Biden administration. I mean, he's literally suing the president of the United States right now, folks. They tried to gaslight Trump in the same way when Trump was being censored. And they tried to tell him, "Oh, you're not being censored." And he's like, "They literally just took down my Twitter account. They literally just kicked me off of Facebook." And they gaslighted Trump after the 2020 election. I'm no great fan of Donald Trump, but what they did to him and his campaign, in my opinion, was wrong. After the 2020 campaign, after the election, he had every right to challenge the election. He felt that he had a case. Rudy Giuliani's a great lawyer. Rudy Giuliani put together a case. He took it to the courts in the various states, and they would not even hear the case. The judges were gaslighting an experienced lawyer, a senior prosecutor, former federal prosecutor like Rudy Giuliani. When he brings the case, they wouldn't even let it be heard. They wouldn't even let the case into the courtroom. Then they go all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court declined to hear the case and basically gaslighted President Trump and his entire legal team by saying, "Oh, you lost. We're not even going to look at this. You haven't got standing in our courts." To me, it's absolutely outrageous. And so now they're giving Kennedy in the courts the same kind of treatment that Donald Trump received in the courts. And it wouldn't surprise me that the judge will find some way to never let this case go to court at all. May just rule on a motion to dismiss by Google and have the case thrown out. And Kennedy may never get his day in court. Obviously, I hope for a better outcome, but I wouldn't put anything past these judges anymore.
Intervention just based on that reason alone, I think would be a really good move. So I really like the idea that was floated earlier about one of those happening, but an intervention specifically about censorship just kind of makes logical sense because you won't let me speak my mind, to the public in the form that you're able to. So I have to interrupt what you're doing, so I can get the message out because I believe it's that important. And if it means I got to go to jail, it means I got to go to jail. So I think you came up with a great idea earlier, and I really hope he does act on that because it's illegal to censor a presidential candidate. So he should start out his intervention with that. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Kennedy's the kind of guy, he's not afraid of going to jail. He's been arrested numerous times for acts of civil disobedience, mostly involving the environment. But that's what he does, and he does it very well, and he's not afraid of going to jail. And it would be a badge of honor for him, honestly, to get arrested by President Biden for interrupting a
That
speech.
means that would mean Biden has arrested two of his political opponents. So
Exactly.
so I would love to see
Exactly.
if he can really make that case in front of the American people. But I don't think he could do that. So that could be effective. I really hope he does that.
I honestly hope he does too. Maybe he will listen to this space and give the idea due consideration. I'm sure that there are people around him advising him who would tell him, "Bobby, don't do that." But ultimately, he's the boss and he's his own man and he thinks for himself and he doesn't have handlers and he doesn't let anybody tell him what to do. He's a fighter. He's Irish and he's stubborn like me. And I get it. So, I say go Bobby, go pick up your bullhorn and give him hell. I want to bring in Thomas, who's been wanting to speak for a while. And we are opening the floor at this point to questions, comments from people in the space. If you have something you'd like to say, please request to speak and put your hand up so I can see you. And I'll get to you as I can. And I want to bring in Thomas next. Thomas has been waiting for a while. I'm not even going to try to pronounce your last name, Thomas, because I'll probably get it wrong. So please introduce yourself and tell me how to pronounce your last name and tell me what's on your mind.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, excellent. I closed my computer and everything and came back and it finally worked. My name is Thomas Milsarek. As some young gentleman said in the early part of this space that they were the youngest, I'm probably the oldest. I'm almost 74 years old. If you go to my space and read my pin post and then you read another post down a ways on the Maui fires, you'll find out what I'm about. And I think we need a space shot, but I don't think we need a space shot to Mars. I think we need a space shot to heal the soil in this country. Our health comes from the soil, and commercial agriculture has been destroying the soil since the end of World War II, essentially, and then GMO just made it worse. If you read, like I say, my pinned post, you'll understand more why I'm talking about it, and I certainly couldn't explain it all here, but if we don't heal the soil, we're not going to last as a country. And there's a book I want to recommend everybody read, and you don't even have to read this book. You can go to a site, you can get this book for free, and the site will actually read the book to you. Now, this book is called Topsoil and Civilization. It was written by two farmers in the middle of the last century, I think around the 1950s. And the theme of this book is, I think, what's going on in our country right now, and it's directly related to the soil. When the soil in a country goes down in quality, the food goes down in quality. When the food goes down in quality, human organs go down in quality. One of the organs in the human is the brain. And they go on to say that civilization after civilization disappeared for the very reason I just described. When the quality of the brain goes down, you end up having politicians who don't make any sense, don't make any good decisions, have no more logic, are ruled by greed and power, have no idea what health is. And so I could say so much more. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I saw him in Atlanta, Georgia. I was right under the stage in 2016 or 17 when he slandered the head of the CDC. He said, I am slandering you publicly. I want you to take me to court. I want you to put me in jail or fine me with $1 million fine for slandering you. And do you think they responded to that? They did not, because they wouldn't have stand a chance in court. So I think Robert F. Kennedy is definitely our best shot. And when he did his little session with the farmers, I recommend everybody go listen to his session with the farmers, and listen especially to the guy from Guatemala. I bought his book before that show was even over. So I'll just go on to say what I've already said. Read that book or listen to it, Topsoil and Civilization, and it explains why we're going to disappear if we don't fix the soil. And with that, I'll just say thank you for letting me talk, and anybody can ask me anything they'd like.
That was beautiful, Thomas. Thank you. I know it's not about censorship, but what you had to say really reached out and touched my heart. I'm kind of a organic health food nut myself, and I understand exactly what you mean about the quality of the food that we're eating. And, I actually have friends who have moved to Russia, Americans who have moved to Russia. And one of them is about to join us here in about 5 minutes, my friend Kevin Mikalitsi, who is our Maverick News correspondent in Crimea. And Kevin is he has this beautiful garden where he grows all of his own food. And he's always telling me about, comparing it to the food he ate in the United States before he moved there. I think he moved there about 5 years ago. and they don't have GMOs in Russia. They're literally against the law. Um, he tells me that the food there is so pure that he feels healthier than he's ever felt in his life. And other friends that I have who have moved to Russia confirm that. They send me pictures of their food and they're like, can you believe how organic and beautiful this tomato is? Look at these strawberries, look at and even in the pictures I can tell if I compare that to what I buy at my local supermarket. I'd much rather be eating that tomato that they have in Russia. So I'm going to ask my friend Kevin to join us in a few minutes and follow up on that question with him. And I see that Holden has his hand up. Holden, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, thank you. I'm having some connection issues a little bit here, so I'm sorry if I missed something for a second there. But Thomas, that was fantastic. I agree completely. The conversation Bobby had with the farmers that was amazing. That was a great conversation. And I'm outside and I'm going to have to drop out in a second here. But one point you made too that I loved was that I wanted to refer back to too was, that having unhealthy food, everything that really contributes to the downfall of societies. The Roman Empire in particular, one of the biggest reasons that they fell was the lead in their water. That became a huge issue towards the end of their empire, and it contributed to their downfall. So that was a great point. And I just wanted to say, I have to drop out now, but thank you so much for hosting this, Lori and Anita, for co-hosting. This has been a fantastic, fantastic conversation. And I'm really, really grateful that you guys brought me up to speak. So thank you all, and I hope you have a wonderful night.
Thanks, Holden. It was great having you here, and I look forward to doing more Twitter Spaces with you in the future. I know that you host regular spaces here. Is it on Monday nights?
Mondays and Thursday nights, yes.
Wonderful. Well, invite me sometime. I would love to join you.
Absolutely. Please do join. I'd love to have you. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks so much. And let's see here. Anybody else got their hand up? Anyone have a question or a comment? We're about to bring this space to a close because, believe it or not, we have been going for almost 5 hours. Wow. But it's just been amazing. And, I'm not that sleepy yet. If anybody has any questions, anybody else wants to join, let me add Jake back in. I see he has his hand up. And Jake, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
I have one last question I wanted to ask you. That's a point of confusion for me is I'm still trying to figure out, since there's no way Biden is going to debate RFK Jr., how is he going to get on the ballots or how's he going to win the primaries?
That's a loaded question. Of course, I'm not a strategist with the campaign, but I have been doing political campaigns, for 35, 40 years now. Been a political animal all my life, and I have the same question that you do. What's the strategy to win? And not to simplify it too much, but when it comes right down to it, politics is math. It's a simple game of math, and you can't win without the votes. As much as we love to say that Bernie Sanders was cheated, and in fact he just didn't bring enough votes. He didn't bring enough delegates to the convention to win the nomination. And honestly, the same is true of Bobby's uncle, Senator Ted Kennedy. I'm old enough to remember the 1980 campaign when Senator Kennedy challenged President Jimmy Carter, who was much like Joe Biden, sort of a failure as a president. And the economy was bad, and we had foreign policy tensions around the world. Senator Kennedy put up a hell of a good fight. He went all the way to the convention. But, and you can watch on YouTube, and I would encourage people to go look on YouTube at coverage of the 1980 Democratic National Convention and look at the roll call vote. look at what happened and how Senator Kennedy lost the nomination to Jimmy Carter, and it all comes down to math. So really the answer to your question, and it's old advice, but it's still true. The way to do this is Bobby absolutely must win primaries, not just by a small margin. He has to win by such an overwhelming, large margin that they cannot deny him the nomination. You know, they just cannot deny him the nomination. When the win is that big, the voting machines really can't flip the numbers. You know, it has to be an overwhelming majority, and he has to come to that convention next year, next August, with such an overwhelming number of delegates. And they have to be loyal delegates, that he's not going to lose them. They're not going to flip at the last minute. It's really the only path to the nomination. We have to overwhelm the system with votes. You know, we have to win by huge margins, and that's why our ground game is so important, especially because we're being censored everywhere. We can't rely on social media alone. We can't rely on YouTube, on Facebook, on, you know, those avenues of getting his message out to the people are being suppressed, are being outright censored. It's going to come down to knocking on doors, winning this the old-fashioned way. And people like Thomas and some of the older people here who remember those years before the internet and how campaigns used to be run in the good old days, that's how we did it. We went out door knocking. We, you know, called people on the phone. We talked to our neighbors. It's literally winning people over one vote at a time and making sure that they get to the polls, making sure that they vote, making sure that they're registered, making sure they're registered in the correct party. Obviously, he's running in the Democratic Party primary. If your state has closed primaries, you're going to have to, if you're not already a Democrat, you'll need to switch your voter registration to the Democratic Party so that you can vote in the Democratic Party primary in your state. If you're lucky enough to live in a state that has open primaries, you don't have to change your voter registration. I know that he has a lot of support among registered independents, registered libertarians, registered Republicans. And, you know, they may vote for someone else in the general election. A lot of Trump supporters, you know, will probably vote for Donald Trump next November. But if you like Bobby Kennedy, what I ask of you is to, you know, switch your voter registration during the primary season to Democrat and give Kennedy your vote to help a good man get the nomination. So that when we get to next November, if you want to vote for Donald Trump or the Republican nominee, that's fine. I hope that we can win you over and you'll vote for Kennedy. But wouldn't you rather see a matchup between two really strong candidates? Wouldn't you rather see Kennedy representing the Democrats and a good Republican running against him? Judging by the polls, that guy is going to be Donald Trump. But I think that would make a hell of a good race. And, you know, I would like to see that myself. Obviously, I'm going to be voting for Kennedy no matter what. But maybe Anita has some thoughts to share on that.
So if we get a perfect storm, like let's say Biden goes senile or whatever, or his party, you know, they bury him, or who knows what, and then Trump gets locked up also, that would create a true window of opportunity for RFK, right?
Let me jump in here and just say that I don't think anything's going to happen to Trump. It hasn't so far. So I think Trump is going to continue on, and he's certainly got a lot of support nationwide. The other issue is that many people are talking about is just Biden's health, and really what they're doing, what they're holding him up as the candidate, and I think in a very unfair way, because I don't think he's able to be the candidate this time around. And my strategy would be that they have candidates for the Democratic Party in their back pocket that they're going to bring out pretty soon. And in some way, they may disqualify Biden. So whatever happens, it's going to be a lot of strategizing in back rooms, and the media is going to be involved. And is it fair? No. But I think Lori hit the nail on the head when she said that's the big thing. In closed primary states, we have to make sure that anyone that's voting for Mr. Kennedy is already registered as a Democrat, that we get out the vote. We get people that can't get to the polls, we get them there. We make sure that they know what the primary date is in their respective states. And we tell everyone about our candidate. And I can't even add any more to that, really. So, but that's what I think.
Hey, Anita, if you wouldn't mind taking over the hosting duties for a few moments, I've got something I need to attend to here at the house. Can you take over for a few minutes? I'll be right back.
Sure.
Thank you.
So who has another question? I'm looking at, or if there's anybody out there that wants to add to this.
Anita, let me just say something here real quick.
Okay.
Okay, so Anita's on the right track. So clinically, Joe Biden, by the FAST scale, and you can look that up, FAST scale on Google. And this is based on observation of his behavior, his gait. Joe Biden has, we'll say, high moderate dementia. And, you know, they've been talking about this. There's nothing new about this. As far as you look at some of these YouTube shows like Rising and so on and so forth. Well, these shows are not being pulled. Sometimes there's a couple of women on Rising are going on for 20 minutes about Joe Biden's cognitive dysfunction. You can see how he walks. He has what's called a Parkinsonian gait, very stiff gait. That's why his wife was holding on to him while he was in the general election. She was so lovey-dovey holding on to him so he didn't fall down. But beyond that, so Joe Biden will not be the nominee. He is a placeholder right now, trying to hold him up as long as they can to slim down the probability of any primary where a guy like Bobby Kennedy can get some traction. And Kamala Harris, she's a bit of an obstacle for this game plan. So they've rolled her out to let her basically word salad herself out of any consideration for being a true competitor in the presidential, on the Democratic side. That said, if you've watched Meet the Press, Face the Nation, I think there was a congressman, I think from Minnesota coming on. He's talking to donors. He named a few other people like Gretchen Whitmer. And of course, we all know Hillary. Hillary has gotten a new hairdo. Hillary will certainly be the first one to step up. She's not going to give that up. And in the end, the World Economic Forum choice would be Gavin Newsom. So what we have right now is a window of opportunity whereby we don't have this large group of candidates on the Democratic side. Democratic side's basically being ignored right now in deference to the Republican side. You watch this on the news show. They don't really talk about the Democratic situation at all. It's all about what's going on the Republican side, whether it's Trump, Ramaswamy, Pence, whatnot. So what's going to happen here is, as Anita alluded to, and if we're paying attention, we all know this. It's either we have the issues with the, we'll say legal entanglements of money that's gone one place or another, and obviously his health issues, principally the cognitive dysfunction, and is he going to have an event of some sort? One more fall. He's basically one more solid, nose grinder away from the discussion really maturing on that Joe Biden just is in no shape to do this. So right now, while we have no one else is on the track, we need to get our car out on the track and run it hard and rack up laps while everybody else is still getting ready to start their motors. That's my opinion on it. I've said this for a while and I'm sticking to it. I'm quite sure this is how this thing is going to eventually play out, maybe with some little variation, but there's people waiting to get in. And of course, you can go to that World Economic Forum and you'll see Gavin Newsom right there with Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates. So enough from me.
Why do you
Anybody
think?
else has any comments? Go at it.
I have a question for you. So why do you think Gavin Newsom would be aligned with Klaus Schwab?
He was at the World Economic Forum.
Oh, was he?
Oh yeah, it's on video. Yeah.
When?
The most recent get together.
Oh Jesus! And how
okay,
long?
This is where we're going. Central bank digital currency, control over us all. The COVID thing is all part of it. It's a multi-layered plan because we're the problem. The people are the problem.
On that specific point, if you actually Google Gavin Newsom's name right now, what you'll see is a ton of articles talking about how angry the Biden campaign is, that he's about to be debating Ron DeSantis, who is supposedly one of the Republican contenders. So that tells you that there's some disagreement happening on that side, and the Biden campaign.
I didn't catch what you're saying. Did you say that this was about Biden debating DeSantis or something?
No. If you Google Gavin Newsom, then you get a bunch of articles saying how the Biden campaign is angry because the Gavin Newsom campaign may be planning a debate with the Ron DeSantis campaign. So,
alrighty, yeah. See, that's where we're going, baby. That's it. So yeah, there's gonna be some fun going on here, but the whole thing is when we get a real campaign, then they can't hey, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He's been to 20% for a while, but what Anita is saying is absolutely we have to dominate because we've got to beat the super delegate BS, right? We all know how this works. Bernie Sanders came out yesterday, which was really a disgusting display of hypocrisy on a level heretofore never before seen. To listen to that guy talk. So, this is what's going to happen. So this is our window of opportunity to score goals. I'm a hockey player. Shoot the puck. Anyways, enough of me.
Well,
I just want to get that out there.
Can you reiterate on some of the things that Bernie was talking about? For anybody that doesn't know, Bernie was at St. Anselm's in New York.
I can talk about this a little bit.
Yeah, and
the most hilarious part of the whole thing was the title that we need to step aside or something from the corporate wing of the Democratic Party. That was basically the title of Bernie Sanders' speech yesterday. Now, is there anyone that thinks Bernie Sanders is anything less than a go along, get along gas bag who has never taken a stand for anything that basically he stood for? So, and I'm a supporter of Bernie Sanders. I did have $1,600 stolen from me by ActBlue when I supported Bernie Sanders to what I thought was a tune of $600 back in 2016. But instead, I got taken for $2,300. Bernie Sanders even had the gall to talk about the military-industrial complex a little bit. We're going to do Medicare for all this stuff. And what has this guy done? And of course, he was comparing Joe Biden, alluding to strongly, what can Joe Biden do in his second term? We remember what Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He's trying to compare Joe Biden to Franklin Delano Roosevelt. I mean, you can find this thing and watch it, and it would be hilarious if it wasn't so disgusting. So that's and that's my I basically listened to the whole thing, which was about 40 minutes.
So do you think that RFK Jr. has a path to the presidency? And if so, what, like it's like a 5% chance, 2% chance, 1% chance?
Oh, I think to me, and I don't know if it was you who said this, but one or more people said this guy is the most amazing candidate of my lifetime.
Yeah.
I think we have a very good chance if the campaign is managed correctly. All people have to do, and I talk to a lot of Republicans, okay, because that's where I live is a lot of Republicans, okay. People respond to him because he is so authentic. And the uniting thing, again, totally unique characteristic in any candidate we've ever seen running for president in the last 60 years. So he has a history. My girlfriend was reading a book. It's talking about who this guy is. And there's nothing inauthentic about him because his whole life he's cared about people. He has traveled and lived with poor people like around the world. I mean, he is just we talked about. I think Lori mentioned earlier about we need to find a moniker for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. instead of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So the AI can pick him up. You know what I'd call him? Batman, because that's who he is. He is like truly for truth, justice, and the American way. Batman.
Shouldn't we? I was thinking about this too, because because I publish rfkusa.com. And
yeah. And I love your shit. I'm listening to your stuff, and man, that's awesome.
Oh,
that is awesome.
But the challenge though is whenever I'm writing stuff, I have to say RFK Jr. But I was thinking to myself for a second, isn't the rule that when the father dies, that the son becomes the senior? So isn't he actually RFK now?
I think there's something technical with that in regards to just politeness and protocol. And the thing that I know for sure, because it's been asked, is it's his name and he uses the junior. So he expects us to comply with that. Why he uses the junior is probably out of respect for his father.
For his father, yeah, that's probably right. Yeah,
but I'm not speaking for him, but I would just say if it's his name, we have to honor that.
I almost think
you know what I'm saying? What? Hashtag Batman. I mean, it sounds funny, but when you read this book, that's what this guy is.
I'll go one better. Let's call him Superman.
I don't know where I'm trying to. She put it away. It's the book that.
It's the book that. What's his name?
The thick one with his picture on it.
Yeah, the last name was Russell of the author. Let me see if I
got it over here. Here's the book. And I do have to do some reading. I got to read this one and the Fauci. It's the real RFK Jr.
Oh, Dick Russell's new book.
Dick Russell book. Yeah, and I'm telling you, I'm just telling you, the stuff she's reading to me, it's like, that's who this guy is. This guy's been helping people. He got this from his father and his uncle, and he was helping and hanging out with like people not of his class, if you know what I mean, since he was a kid. I mean, and you look at what he's done. One of his best friends is a guy who was a commercial fisherman and he talks about him. This guy's the antithesis of what you would think the American aristocracy, which is he's certainly comes from aristocracy in the American scenario, but he is actually the antithesis of what you would expect. And so his goal, and he talks about whether we're talking about this home ownership plan as part of the policy, that's being put together, restoring the middle class, bringing so this guy, he is like the reincarnation of his uncle and his father. And because he is such a brilliant guy that
He's
can
a living personification.
Yeah, exactly. And so if we're talking about, if there was a way to defeat this AI bullshit, and so it's like, well, how do we defeat it? Do we defeat it with a moniker? I don't know the extent. I'm not a tech guy. I'm an Apple guy. I got Macintosh computers since day one. Okay. So, I just want the stuff to work. The bottom line is this guy is so special in the American political realm. And this is the danger to what I call the corporatist nation. We don't have a democracy. We haven't had a democracy for minimum 30 years.
More than
and
that.
Yeah, it is that bad. I can, you look at it from the standpoint of, okay, our candidates are picked. They're picked by the money. And, I don't know if you were on there when I was talking earlier, but, so I ran for Congress a couple of times. John, yes. If you're willing to play ball with the pharmaceutical industry, we get you all the contributions you need. Well, I didn't go for that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So my biggest opponent was the Florida Democratic Party. So the bottom line is, if we don't defeat the forces that do not want this guy, from the CIA to BlackRock, Wall Street, big tech with Intel management, whatever it is, we are screwed. We're done. You'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Klaus.
One of the big challenges I'm having is I keep talking to people about RFK, and it isn't so much that I'm trying to win them over so much as I'm trying to, enlighten them or share insight with them about how great I think he is. And it's amazing the amount of resistance I meet with. I get like all the time, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist.
I'm going to bring Kevin Michelizzi up to the microphone. Kevin is originally from Minnesota. He's an American, moved to Russia, now lives in Crimea, and is an information warfare specialist who understands all too well the games that are played on social media. And of course, with the time difference, Kevin wasn't able to join us earlier because he was sound asleep. They're like 8 hours ahead over there. But he just woke up and he's got his morning coffee and is joining the panel with us now. I thought he would be the perfect person to talk to. He's one of our correspondents at Maverick News. And he's really helpful when it comes to how information warfare is played. And censorship, make no mistake about it, is information warfare. Silencing your opponent and doing all of the, slimy things that we see the deep state doing to slander RFK Jr., to smear him, to label him as a conspiracy theorist. And most importantly, they're trying to make him the invisible man. He's the invisible candidate. And, Jake was talking about how the biggest problem he's encountering as a volunteer when he goes out and tries to talk to people, of course, their first thought is, oh, well, Kennedy, he's crazy. He's a conspiracy theorist because
they say he's anti-vax.
And they say he's anti-vax. And I'll tell you what, the biggest problem that I encounter when I try to talk to your average man on the street about Kennedy, this is the question I get more often than not is, he's running? What? Robert Kennedy, he's running for president? I mean, they don't know. They don't know he's running. They are totally unaware because they get their news from ABC. They watch the NBC nightly news. They watch Face the Nation on Sunday mornings or Meet the Press, and they read the New York Times, and they don't even know the guy is running. They are, in other words, the information warfare campaign is working. It is succeeding. And for all of us here, you know, people like us on Twitter, we're political animals. We sort of live in this sort of vacuum where we are politically aware and we're paying attention. We are certainly aware that he's running for president. But, you know, your average American out there doesn't know that he's even in the race. So I'd like to bring Kevin in on that to talk to us a little bit about how this information warfare game is played and what you see from your unique perspective, Kevin, as to what you think they're doing to Robert Kennedy Jr. Hey, Kevin.
Hey. So, hey,
hello,
everybody.
friend.
So,
good morning.
Yeah, thanks. So let's start this by telling you what the Department of Defense, because that's who actually runs this stuff. It is not Biden and his administration. They are involved. It's the Department of Defense that runs this, and they call it perception management. So what they're really doing is they're downplaying everything about RFK Jr. so that the perception of the people in the United States is that he's not a candidate. He's not a viable candidate if they know about him. So, this document that you want translated, send Lori some of the screenshots. She'll forward them to me. I will find them because I can guarantee you that this document is online, and it's just that Google is not providing you access to it.
I've noticed lately, because I'm like a 10th degree black belt in Google search with finding stuff. And I've noticed over the last maybe 6 months or so, it's become orders of magnitude more difficult to find anything. Especially, it's weird almost.
Yeah, it's, keep in mind why they've been taking down all these journalists that are in the Donetsk and Lugansk areas, why they've been censoring Maverick News. This is Google. They are active with the CIA. They are active with the NSA. I have an IP address that has been flagged now, and some of my intelligentsia friends here have told me that I'm actually being attacked by them trying to silence my internet connection. I actually had to go elsewhere to connect with you guys this morning. So they are actively out there trying to control the narratives.
So you think it's the Department of Defense that's behind this?
I know the Department of Defense is involved in it, but the Department of Defense is basically run by the CIA and the NSA.
Right. And so the reason why they're so opposed to him is for the same reason they were so opposed to his uncle, basically. It's the military industrial complex that
exactly. Yeah. They do,
because
the only unelected guys in the country that run things don't want to be eliminated. I hate to bring him up, but this is the problem Trump had. He went into office with all these grand ideas about what he was going to do, and they quashed him. The fake Russian connections. I've seen the same thing with RFK. I've seen the pictures of him where they say, well, look, he's, got somebody in Russia, a woman in Russia wearing a shirt, and he supports RFK Jr. Well, reality is that picture that was put up was actually Ukraine. It's just that driving people's minds on what they should believe. And the U.S. population, for whatever reason, is still of the mentality that, there's no lies being told to them.
It's amazing. It's amazing to me how naive Americans are, and where America got in really big trouble with this, with the naivete of the American people, is with the COVID-19 vaccines. This is like this nightmare with myocarditis and all this stuff, and all of this comes from the American people's naivete, where they trust the government, and the government, as so far as I can tell, and I'm not paranoid. I realize I sound like some kind of paranoid weirdo, but it's like they're literally trying to destroy the American people. It's the weirdest, most un-American, unpatriotic thing. It's just so and I think that's why they confuse people so much, is because if you're an American, you would never expect that your government's trying to do all this weird stuff, like with COVID, the COVID-19 vaccines, as an example.
Yeah, well, the COVID-19 vaccines, you're not paranoid, because quite honestly, in 2019, 2020, I actually worked on the trainings for the information warfare campaign against these vaccinations, specifically the Russian vaccine, which, is actually much safer than, the ones that are coming out of the West. They actually had a campaign to discredit the Russian vaccine and promote the Western ones. And everything they said about Russia's vaccine was, in fact, what was going on with their vaccines. They weren't tested well. They were not as safe as they claimed. And, the whole information warfare thing with the United States that people need to realize is they are exactly what they accused the Soviet Union of being back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Russian news cannot be trusted. It's all propaganda. Now, I know that isn't the case, and we don't have that situation here now either. The problem the Russians and the Soviets had is that they tend to hold things a little too close to their chest. They don't lie to their people, but they don't always tell them what's going on, as opposed to the United States that just outright lies.
So why did the Russians go along with COVID and attempt to vaccinate everybody in Russia?
Well, they didn't attempt to vaccinate everybody. They offered people the option. They did see initially that there was some illness going around. What it was, it was identified as some virus. They did a vaccine based on older technology, and, it's basically a flu vaccine. So I've been vaccinated. I've been, I've gotten the boosters. No side effects, except I started speaking Russian fluently. So,
well, when I saw this originally, the first thing I thought with the COVID-19 thing, with because the one thing that stands out the most is when everybody was coming home with like 409 and like, using like Windex and 409 on like their grocery bags and like, fruit and stuff. And I saw the whole thing happen, which seemed surreal to me. But what I noticed at the same time is when I would go out into nature, even if it's just like, going outside and like looking at the birds singing in the trees and stuff, nothing had changed. And something told me this doesn't jibe. None of this stuff makes sense with COVID. And so when they came out with the vaccines and stuff, I thought to myself, there's not a chance in hell I'm going to take any of this, because this is voodoo medicine at best, because I was aware of the testing procedures that it normally takes to approve a vaccine. So I thought, like, there's just no way I'm going to be, or my family members are going to be beta testers with this stuff.
exactly.
But then, yeah, and then they're like, oh, and you have to wear masks, and like little kids in school are wearing masks and stuff. And I was like, whoa, 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 wait a minute. This, like, the longer it went on, the more absurd it became to me. But I took my family to a restaurant, ironically, in Hawaii. And we had to, just to go to Hawaii, we had to like get like tests and stuff. And then when you arrive in Hawaii, you had to go through this whole thing with masks and all this like crazy stuff. And and we wanted to go to a restaurant, and we were told you cannot eat in this restaurant. You can get the food to go, but because you're unvaccinated, you pose a threat. So you cannot eat in this restaurant. And being Caucasian, for me, or having like light skin or whatever, I
Now you know
felt
how it feels to be black a long time
well,
ago.
not yet. In like in the deep South in 1955 ish was what it felt like to me. Like, boy, you can't eat here. You ain't got your COVID-19 thing. And yeah, absolutely, you're right, Lori. That's exactly how I felt. But
Well,
my
I would
point,
just like to add, for what it's worth, as a historian, that the Democratic Party was always historically the party of segregation. During the 1960s, when John F. Kennedy, when Martin Luther King were trying to better integrate this country, integrate education, integrate public places. Remember, that wasn't done until Lyndon Johnson passed the first Civil Rights Act of 1964, and then the Civil Rights Act of 1965, which integrated all public buildings and places of business. But, remember, the opposition to that was coming from Kennedy's own party. And at the time, they held the majority in Congress, and it was the Solid South, and they were all segregationists. And so I find it very interesting, and I've been crowing about it for the last 2 years, since they rolled out the vaccine mandates, excluding unvaccinated people from public places such as restaurants, grocery stores, you name it. That it was clearly discriminatory on its face, and it was taking us back in time to those dark days in our history when we were excluding human beings from public places, this time not based on the color of their skin, but based on some medical procedure that they may or may not have taken that's frankly none of your business. And you don't have any business asking me whether I took this stupid vaccine or not.
that all turned out to be fake. That's like
Yeah.
the weird thing is if you fast forward to today and we look back on it, that was all kabuki theater for basically nothing. It was all baseless and had no basis in reality. And so I'm even more pissed off now I was livid when this happened, and it's hard to upset me, but they made me feel like a second class citizen in my own country for the first time. I never felt that way before, ever.
I
But
won't.
now,
Oh, I,
please.
I won't disagree with you on your view about how you were treated. I would like to step back just a hair, though, and this kind of fits in with your question about why Russia went along with this. There was a virus. Um, that's indisputable. There is a virus. How dangerous
A
it is
coronavirus.
was greatly overblown. Russia went along with this initially because, there was a concern for their people. Now, we had similar requirements in Moscow. They required masks. You could not go out with getting a code to say that you were allowed to be out on a particular day. This lasted for 2, maybe 3 months, and it just all fell apart. They recommended people get basically the new flu vaccine that they created, but it was optional. Many doctors did not get it, even though the Western media told you everybody was asked to get it. Many, many, many people here did not get this vaccine. We were going to restaurants without masks. Many stores did ask people to put masks on. They had signs on the doors. Most of them did not pay attention to it. Most people wore their masks below their nose. It wasn't a big deal. Now, my wife is a medical professional, or was in the United States. The effectiveness of a mask, you can't dispute that either. It does keep you from spreading a virus somewhat. This is why doctors wear them in surgery, but they have to be medical masks. You can't be a bandana across your face. So this really plays into how propaganda works. They take a truth and they make it bigger than what it is. So if you look at any propaganda, it starts with an itty bitty little piece of truth.
Interesting. Lori, I have another question for you about your YouTube videos that were censored. Um, I think I listened to, was the first one that they censored the one you did with Matthew?
Yes. That was the RFK All the Way podcast, first episode. And the
I
second
don't,
and the third. They took down all three of them.
I have to tell you, just, on a personal note, I can't even put into words how upsetting that fact is to me, because I didn't listen to two, and actually I think I did. Or wait, no, did it? No, because didn't they take it down right away? I think you
Yes.
put something up and then it was gone. I couldn't listen to it.
It was
But
gone within an hour, less than an hour.
right, so you weren't even. I mean, you didn't even say anything, right? That I don't understand. Like, why do you think? Can you think of anything that you said that would make them want to take it down?
No, I mean, in the first episode, which was removed less than an hour after it was posted, it was basically, we didn't really get into the topic of vaccines or COVID. It was just flagged and taken down because it was Kennedy. I'm sure of that. And I can confirm that because in episode 2 of the RFK All the Way podcast, I had uploaded it and scheduled it for a premiere on YouTube when it would go live at a certain time. And less than 1 minute into the premiere, I mean, guys, we hadn't even gotten past the intro music yet. I hadn't even opened my mouth or said a word that the video was taken down. The stream was killed. The live stream was taken down by YouTube. So that episode never even got to air
In
on
episode
YouTube.
1, if I recall, you were just talking about how much you admired and how great you thought Kennedy was, right?
That's right. It was our coverage of his announcement speech in Boston on
Yeah,
April 19th. So Matthew was there. He went to the speech in Boston. And
that's
so he
right.
was just telling us what it was like to be there and what Kennedy said. And so it was all about Kennedy's platform. It was about his speech. It was about his politics. But never, ever, ever did we delve into COVID vaccines or anything like that. And as you recall, most of his speech in Boston was not about that topic at all. It was about, other things that he would do as president and why he was running. And that's what that speech was about.
This is beyond disturbing to me as an American, because what they've done to censor you is, I mean, there, people can argue about censorship. Like, maybe this should be censored, maybe it shouldn't. But with what you did, there's no reason in the world to censor that. I mean, it's
Right.
just ridiculous. Um,
It's just news and commentary. That's literally all it was. But, and maybe Kevin can shed some light on this since he's an information warfare specialist. Somehow they've got AI crawlers on YouTube and on all social media platforms. They can see what is in the title of the video, in the description, the text. And I believe, I can't prove it, maybe this censorship lawsuit that Kennedy has going, once we get discovery, perhaps we can prove it. That's the aim, is we hope to prove it, that they are flagging videos with the AI based on text that they see. If they see RFK, for example, in the title, in the description of the video, there's no other
yeah.
way to explain it. Like, how else would they have known that we were going to put out medical misinformation on episode 2 before we even got past the intro music, before we said a word? So it's obviously got to be his name, his initials, any kind of Kennedy related content, his photograph in the thumbnail, that the AI crawler sees that, flags that, and in some cases just flat out removes it, like they did to me.
Well, I want to hear Kevin's input, but Kevin, before you share that, I just want to interject one quick point. I published the story on RFK USA. I published the Mike Tyson's interview of RFK Jr., where he, I think for 9 or 10 minutes, went into this diatribe about how the CIA had killed his father and uncle. And I thought it was fascinating. But the thing I noticed was that video had been on YouTube for 2 years at least. So it was recorded and went up on YouTube 2 years ago.
That's
So I
right.
did
It
it
went up in 2021, and YouTube wasn't bothered by it until just very
exactly
recently. Isn't that
right.
funny?
Right. So I did it as part of a story about, ironically, about how Tucker Carlson may have gotten fired from Fox News because of his discussion of the Kennedy assassination in great detail. And I speculated, but I said, this kind of makes sense. And then I put together all this detail on it. And so my story was up for like a couple days. And, I would go look at it every day and, proofread it, try and catch any typos. And then all of a sudden, poof, it was gone. And I was like, wait, what's going on here? This is so weird. Like,
Wait, they took it off your blog, off your website?
No, because YouTube took it down. So I
Oh,
had embedded it in the story, and it just does that thing where it says, like, it doesn't say 404 not found, but it says something like, uh, you know, um, this video has been taken down due to whatever it is. So instead of showing like an active thumbnail that was whatever Mike Tyson and his team put up, it was like this weird black screen. And this has happened to me a lot. And whenever it happens, I leave them up on purpose on rfkusa.com as a record, just so you can see, like whack-a-mole, like where they're censoring, where they're censoring, where they're censoring.
great. Good idea. Good idea.
And but I mean, this is like for them to go delete a 2-year-old video. That's just weird. I mean,
And
this
that seems to be happening a lot these past few months. There's
it's
the Mike
revisionist
Tyson
history.
video. There was an interview that Bobby did with the comedian Theo Vaughn from like 2020 or early
And
2021.
didn't they take down the Jordan Peterson video as well?
Yeah, and they took that down
Um,
like the very next day. It was a brand new interview, but
eh,
they're going back and pulling a bunch of old ones down, like the Theo Vaughn, the Mike Tyson. There was one with a dark journalist. They took one down that Kim Iverson had done with Bobby back in February of this year, but they didn't remove the video until May. And some of the videos they took down were, several years old. It just doesn't make any sense at all.
yeah, this is hardcore censorship.
I would
You
like to
know,
make a point.
I will get to you in just one moment. I do see you there with your hand up. I'm sorry that you've had to wait so long. I know it's getting late. I'll come to you next before we close the space up for the night. So hang in there, safe ground. But yeah, Jake, you're absolutely right that, you know, Bobby is an excellent lawyer. He's a winner of a lawyer. If you look at his history in court, he tends to win his cases. He's an excellent trial lawyer. Most cases, as you know, you come from a family of lawyers. So do I. My father was a lawyer. And most cases are settled out of court before they ever get into the courtroom. But Bobby's the kind of lawyer who likes to go to trial. He wants to actually go to trial. He doesn't want to settle out of court. He wants to argue the case on the merits, and he wants to win. And he does that. And, at any other time in our history, I believe that this, for example, this censorship lawsuit against Google and YouTube would get into the courtroom and Kennedy would win. I believe he has a superior argument, and the Constitution would prevail. But we live in a time now that's very different from your grandfather's time. As you well know, that, we see a lot of really corrupt judges sitting on the bench, judges that are ideologically motivated. They're not letting the law rule. They're not letting the Constitution rule. They're letting their own ideological biases determine whether or not they'll even hear a case, right? Like we saw with President Trump after the 2020 election, when he and his lawyers went to courts all across the United States, even up to the highest court in the land, and they refused to even look at the case, to even look at the evidence, to even hear the arguments. And judging by the ruling that we got this week, Judge Trina Thompson there in California. It doesn't look good. This judge looks very ideologically motivated, very biased, and definitely in bed with the Biden administration. And in fact, she's a Biden appointed judge. So I don't have high hopes that, I wish I was more optimistic about this case, but I kind of see where this is going.
You are an expert on the history of the Kennedy assassination, and as am I to a certain extent. And what's so interesting is this really is history repeating itself. Like what they're trying to do to RFK Jr. is exactly what they did to his father and his uncle.
I would argue it's worse. I think it's worse. Now, of course, how do you get worse than assassination? I mean, before they killed them, in their day, nobody censored Senator Robert Kennedy. Nobody censored President John F. Kennedy, even when he was a senator or a congressman in the House. In fact, the press back then loved the Kennedys. The mainstream media bent over backwards to cover the Kennedys. They put them on the cover of every magazine. They would fawn over the Kennedys. They'd kneel and kiss their asses. And up until just about, a few years ago, Robert Kennedy got the same treatment from the press, Robert Kennedy Jr. Mm-hmm. He used to be a regular guest on ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, Fox, frequent commentator that they would turn to talk about, say, environmental issues. And they treated him like a king. But once he got on the wrong side of the narrative, that's when they shut him down. But no, back in the day, now I will say that there was some censorship of his grandfather, Joseph P. Kennedy, who unfortunately got on the wrong side of the narrative in the run-up to World War II. He was ambassador to the Court of St. James. He was in London. He was our ambassador as World War II was ramping up. And he was doing everything that he could to keep America out of that war. He was staunchly anti-war. He had been, a conscientious objector during World War I. Joseph P. Kennedy did not serve in that war, managed to avoid serving in the war as a conscientious objector. So he was trying to keep us out of World War II. But by that time, the momentum was such, by 1939, 1940, it was obvious that sooner or later the United States was going to get into the war. And so FDR recalled him as ambassador, brought him home, basically fired him, and sent him off to political obscurity for the rest of his life. So in a way, that was a kind of censorship. But even then, the press did not censor Joseph P. Kennedy. None of the Kennedys have ever been censored, to my knowledge. Bobby Jr.'s the first.
I have family members that knew Bobby and the old man, Joe Kennedy, and made a really interesting observation. They said, basically, Joseph P. Kennedy Sr. was like a pit bull and a bulldozer. And the reason why he was so successful was his MO in life and in business was he was literally like a bulldozer. He would just like go bulldoze anybody and everything, in the sense that he was very, very, very aggressive when he wanted to be. And he could be very charming and stuff, but that was his MO. And they said that Bobby was really a chip off the old block, that he was just like his father. But as the Attorney General of the United States, he took that same energy and focused it, on the mob and on all kinds of things, which is really interesting. But they also said that that JFK was like the intellectual in the family, which is interesting. And if you think about RFK Jr., to me, he's like a hybrid, because he really is like his father and his uncle morphed into like one person.
I can totally see that. I see that too. And something that Joe Kennedy said about his sons once, he was talking about, JFK had this wonderful way about him that's very rare in a politician, in that he could make friends out of an enemy, right? An ideological enemy. He had a way of charming them, talking to them, listening to them. For example, his discussions with Nikita Khrushchev in Vienna, and then later during the missile crisis. And And after that, they started off as bitter enemies and in time became sort of friends. Um, Kennedy had a way of disarming his enemies and forgiving his enemies in an almost Christ-like way, which baffled his father. Joe was not good at forgiveness,
Mm-hmm.
and same with Bobby Kennedy Sr. Of the two brothers, Bobby was the one who would hold a grudge, and Joe Kennedy once said that he pointed to his son Bobby and he said, "He's like me. Once he hates you, you stay hated. He's never going to forgive you." And that's true of RFK. He did, go after Jimmy Hoffa, Sam Giancana, a lot of gangsters. And once you got on his hate list, including Vice President Lyndon Johnson, who also somehow got on RFK's hate list. But once he hated you, you stayed hated. And that was never going to change. And there was no forgiveness. So, yeah, his son differs from his father in that way, because I know that Bobby has forgiven many of his enemies. He does have that quality that Jack had of being able to talk to people across the aisle, talk to ideological opponents, and to make friends of them, which is a very rare and special quality in politics. I wish we had more like him.
I've never seen anybody like him at all, even remotely close. I mean, I know that Ronald Reagan, who was also Irish, had that same kind of like charm that JFK had in a weird kind of way. And there was like the crazy full head of hair or whatever. But Ronald Reagan could be very charming when he wanted to be, just like JFK.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah,
I've never seen anybody as diplomatic as RFK Jr. Like he's the living personification of like an excellent diplomat. It's almost weird how diplomatic he is. And when he was hauled into that congressional committee on censorship, they pushed him so hard because they were so egregious with what they were saying. That was the first time I actually saw him kind of like almost take the gloves off, which is
no.
Oh, go ahead, please.
I was going to say, we need more diplomats. This is why we've got the problems we have in the world. The problem is that, again, we go to the deep state, and a question Lori asked just a couple of minutes ago. Back in the day, it was very difficult to censor people. We had diplomats that actually went out and talked to people. Now they want to control that narrative so much. Lori, you were asking about, AI. They actually have some pretty stupid algorithms that use a little bit of AI. Is what's happened. The reason you had an article up for 2 years and now all of a sudden it's gone is because the Kennedy name has been added into the algorithm. So anytime something goes out that says Kennedy on it now, it automatically comes down. Very easy to censor people now. It isn't a matter of, if you want to censor somebody, you have to call them back from another country and fire them. You just turn them off on social media. And once you do that, they're censored in everything. The lawsuits, I had a video I did not too long ago with a gentleman who talked about the corruption in the legal system. That lasted 30 seconds as well. And, it was taken down. I appealed it. They hit it on false information. And all the appeals in the world didn't matter. Now I cannot post anything with this particular man's name in it, that it doesn't disappear immediately. So,
It's
CIA,
like what you're describing is deep state whack-a-mole, literally.
Yeah.
Like you put it up, boom, they take it down, like right away, boom, up, down, up, down.
That is really interesting, Coven. We were talking earlier about maybe coming up with some sort of code name for Kennedy to avoid the censorship, instead of putting his name, his initials. I mean, it's ridiculous. he's a political candidate where name recognition is everything. But maybe, just maybe, to get around the censorship, we might have to start calling him Batman or Superman or something other than his actual God-given name.
Yeah,
Well,
but
I assume
If I
what does
might,
that
if
do
I
for
might
you?
eventually get in here, I've been waiting about 45 minutes.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, go ahead, Safe Ground. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. When you look into the Jumbotron, I'm the first one that put up something in regard to this matter on the federal level. The back and forth with the department that's supposed to let things be spoken or not spoken. It's supposed to deal with this appropriately and First Amendment stuff. I also put together, personally created, put together a video there. It's about 3 or 4 minutes long. Again, the first thing up there in the Jumbotron. I'd appreciate if people would look at it and share whatever they would like to share on it. But the situation and RFK is not I don't know anyone on this planet that is a perfect human being. But I think Lori said something that I concur with, that I also have been a big proponent of, and that's to go to court on issues and not settle. So many people go ahead and settle for X millions of dollars or this or that, but the point is not made. The magic of the social change is not made if you don't go ahead and get into a courtroom and get those facts out there and have it articulated clearly, the wrong that was done, and the people are dealt with in an appropriate fashion. Too many times I feel things are settled when I would not have them settled for a monetary sum of money or whatever. The other thing is that I've been following RFK and of course his uncle. I believe in my heart, in my thinking, the greatest speech, the inauguration speech that he gave. I don't. There's no other inauguration speech that comes close, in my opinion. Hopefully you all have heard it, and it's just so amazing. One of the things that struck me on that inaugural speech, where he, being a Catholic and having faith, I put it that way rather than having a religious take. Where he speaks about on earth, like we need to ask, do our part, and hopefully the grace of God or whatever will come. But here on earth, we really need to we need to step up. We need to make our efforts, and we need to get involved. And instead of just like praying, we have to do more than that. So I don't want to take up a whole bunch of time here. Good things are being said, but I've so much been waiting. There's a lot more I wanted to say, but I'm a type of person, I don't want to step on anybody's toes. And but it did seem like I was waiting a day and a half to speak.
Yes,
thank you very much.
I'm so sorry about that. And now that you've got the floor, feel free to take as much time as you like. I'm so sorry for the wait.
I actually want to agree with you about the legal process and seeing things through to the end, but again, it comes to where the intelligence agencies have their fingers. Outside of this group of people, how many people know that Bobby is actually suing over censorship? I would guess not many. And I'll make a prediction.
I might interject. I find there are so many people that don't and that live in the United States that don't even know where Canada is on the map. I mean, I say that tongue in cheek, but I mean, it's like, it's horrendous. I think in today's world, I don't know what's happened with the education system, but there are so many people, maybe it's, trying to put a roof over their head and the rents are like so high, and things are changing in such weird ways. But I mean, I look at this stuff, I look around the nation and I follow this stuff, doing reporting, doing many things, videos and stuff. and even in city councils, and the structure of government. I find like, don't you know what the Constitution says? Police departments, don't you know what the Fourth Amendment is, or the First Amendment? There's so many things going on. It's like we really need much more oversight than is happening now. We really do need to make better the situation where you have political people and police with so much immunity happening that needs to be improved. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And, speaking of what you just said, you're right that most Americans do not know about this lawsuit. The media has hardly covered it at all. And that's the whole reason that I wanted to host this space tonight. I want people to know about this lawsuit. It really does, just like the title of the space says, it affects everyone. It affects every American. It affects everyone around the world who uses YouTube, and every journalist, every creator in the world uses YouTube. Viewers, I think everybody in the world probably has watched a video on YouTube. Some people watch YouTube all day long. Some people don't even have cable TV anymore. They don't have television at all. They consume all of their news and information on YouTube, unfortunately, but they do. And so this affects everyone. It affects you as a consumer, your ability to consume news and information, to consume whatever you want. If you want to watch Russian propaganda, that should be your right. If you want to watch news from Russia, you should be able to do that. You should be able to watch RT. You should be able to, fortunately, you can watch my friend Kevin Michelizzi, and I want to give him a plug for his YouTube channel. He's part of our Maverick News Network, and he does outstanding content. Please do subscribe to his channel. It's called American in Crimea. And it's a really, really great channel. I think you guys would enjoy the content that he does. I don't consider it Russian disinformation or Russian propaganda. I just consider it good, helpful information that adds to a well-balanced diet of news. And that's what every American, every person in the world needs, a well-balanced diet of news. And they're trying to just feed us pablum and feed us crap and say, here's what you're going to eat and you're going to like it. It's like trying to make you eat bugs. They're trying to make you eat crickets,
Lori, you know how everybody talks about how Twitter is the town square for the world?
Mm-hmm.
Arguably, YouTube is the exact same thing. It's the town square for the public broadcasting system, or it's like a public utility, pretty much.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. I don't know how Bobby feels about that. If he feels that these social media platforms should be regulated as public utilities. I haven't heard him answer that question, but I hope someone will ask him where he stands on that.
Well, they almost have to be. And I have one last thing I want to share, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
With what the gentleman just said about Kennedy's speech when he became the president. Somebody also said earlier, Kevin, I think maybe it was you, that said we haven't had democracy for 30 years in this country. I don't think it's ever really been here. I think under the grip that the Dulles brothers had on Eisenhower, as an example, I think they were running the show, basically. But what's so ironic to me about Kennedy, and I'm, Lori, just like you, I'm a student of Kennedy history. And with my online magazine, jfkmagazine.org, in the future, I'm going to be coming out with some amazing new content on the Kennedy assassination. But my point is, in my personal opinion, I think Kennedy was the first president who actually thought he was the president in his naivete and actually tried to be the president. And in exchange, they killed him, basically, which is,
I couldn't agree more.
Terrible. But the supreme irony in this is the next person who thought he was the president was Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, in the exact same way, like almost 1-to-1 with Kennedy, like as different as they are, as similar as they might be, as antithetical as they might be on some levels, he thought in his naivete, just like JFK did, that he was the president. So he went and said, "Hey, I'm the boss. I'm going to boss everybody around." And the swamp, or whatever, permanent Washington, the deep state, whatever you want to call it, basically assassinated Trump. But they did it, instead of physically assassinating him, they basically, stripped everything away from him.
Right.
In the
Right.
final,
They let him know. They let him know who's in charge.
yeah, they basically hogtied him. And what was so strange to me is, I think, from what I saw, do I think they cheated? Yeah, absolutely, no question. And I could be, maybe, I hope I'm wrong as an American. I hope that they didn't cheat Trump. But I think Trump actually won, ironically. And I'm not saying this because like I'm a Trump supporter or anything like that. I'm saying I think he actually won the presidency of the United States. And if he did, but they were able to steal it from him, this is just crazy. And the strangest thing about Trump was when he turned to Pence to save his bacon, Pence turned on him. And I thought that was like one of the strangest things I've ever seen. But I do have an article on RFK USA that goes into great detail where, and I don't know if you're familiar with this guy, he's brilliant. He did this, he was in an interview, and the name of the article is called, I'm looking for it right now, it's called give me 1 second to pull it up. It's called Exposing the Deep State, the Real History of the Deep State Matrix. And there's a guy who's interviewed for an hour and a half. His name, he's a lawyer, and I'm trying to remember his name. I'm trying to find his name. He goes into great detail and explains exactly why Pence did what he did. His name is Ivan Rakelin. Are you familiar with him, Lori?
Nope, don't know that name.
Yeah, so it's like the 7th or 8th story down on rfkusa.com. And I promise you, it will just completely blow your mind when you watch it. It's called The Real History of the Deep State Matrix. So then Trump makes his last stand where he turns to General Milley, and says, "Look, this is unconstitutional. Help me." And Milley said, "Go kick rocks, gold digger," to Trump. And then, of course, Trump went to the Supreme Court as well, and they refused to hear it. So Judge
They
Roberts
told him to go kick rocks. Can you believe that the Supreme Court of the United States turned away the President of the United States,
which is a conservative Supreme Court, with a Supreme Court justice being like a right-wing conservative.
And two of them were appointed by President Trump.
Exactly. So basically, when I say that the swamp assassinated Trump the same way they did Kennedy, they did it with physical violence. And with Trump, they did it, they thought, in the court of public opinion. And it's yet to be seen how this will play itself out. But I think that I draw a strong correlation in between the two of them, both in their naivete, perhaps thinking that they were the president, and they basically, both paid for it in one way or another. It's really profound, and it's a terrible shame.
That is such a great point. And, of course, we're all nervous. We're all concerned for Bobby's safety in this campaign. It's everyone's first thought when he declared that he was running was, "Oh my God, what if they kill him?"
Well, I assume everybody here has seen the Tucker Carlson interview last week, right, with RFK Jr.
Oh yeah.
And the first 10 minutes of that, they spent, it was basically just RFK Jr. talking about, how Obama had it 550 days prior to the election, and how basically everybody got it. And so I did an article on this, which is also on RFK USA, where I go into great detail about the hypocrisy, because in the Biden White House, in the Oval Office, Biden has a bust of RFK Jr.
Yes.
you know.
Or,
But I'm
or
not.
his father. Yeah, his father's bust.
Yeah. RFK. Sorry, I meant RFK Senior. Excuse me. And so he has this bust there, and the fact that his father was assassinated when he won when he was going to win the primary in the state of California, and this is just preposterous that he wouldn't give him secret. Well, he's probably better off anyway without it in a weird way
Right,
because they
right.
were involved in the Secret Service was involved in the assassination of his uncle.
That's right. That's right. And
Um,
we still don't know to what degree because when the JFK Records Act was passed in 1992, of course, it ordered all federal agencies to turn over any and all documents that they had
oh,
relative to the
there
assassination.
is
But the
there.
Secret Service did not comply. The Secret Service literally burned and destroyed tons of documents to avoid complying with the requirements of the JFK Records Act. So we really will never know, most likely, certain things about the Secret Service in regards to the assassination. But we've all seen the Zapruder film, and I think we can all agree that the two guys in the front seats of that limousine were derelict in their duty that day, period.
Oh, yeah. Not only were they complicit, but are you aware of the fact that Kennedy's primary driver, who would have driven him and should have driven him um, in Dallas, uh, died uh, a month before at Camp David?
I don't think that that gentleman was his primary driver. Bill
No, he.
Greer, the man who was driving the limousine in Dallas, he had actually been Kennedy's primary driver the whole time. And Greer had been a Secret Service agent, I believe, going all the way back to the FDR administration or Truman. He was about to age out of his job. Greer was getting pretty old by the time he got to Dallas, and some people argue that Greer was too old to cut the mustard, and that his reflexes were slowed. Maybe that's why he hit the brakes or slowed the car down too much, because he really should not have been in that job because of his age. Back then the Secret Service guys were not young, healthy, fit fellows like you see today. Today, the guys you see surrounding the president in the Secret Service are all quite young and buff and very strong men. But back then, most of the guys on Kennedy's Secret Service detail were in their 50s, and they were not in the best of shape, and they didn't eat well, and they were overweight, and they were heavy smokers and drinkers. And as we know, the night before the assassination, half of the Secret Service detail was over at the Cellar Club getting drunk until 4 o'clock in the morning. So they were hungover.
You know about how Greer's son was interviewed about his father and Kennedy, and he was asked, and he responded, he said, well, Kennedy was Irish, but we're, what was it? I forget the denomination, but he said we're Protestant or something like that.
Yes, yes. I mean, a lot of members of his detail just flat didn't like him.
Yeah.
They just didn't. I mean, some of them loved him, but some of them, maybe in those, quiet moments when they think nobody's listening, probably said to one another, I'm not going to take a bullet for that guy. Are you?
So I have
Oh, and by the
what I'm
way,
talking about.
you gentlemen were talking about, censorship in the past. Let's not forget that the Zapruder film was censored. It was not
totally,
seen
yeah.
by the
Completely
American
modified,
people
yeah.
until it was not seen by the American people until 1975, and only then was it released because of a lawsuit that Robert Groden filed to pry it out of the hands of Time Life, and then it was finally shown on television. But it was late at night. It was a late show that was hosted, believe it or not, by Geraldo Rivera.
Yeah, I think I actually remember that, probably. Yeah.
I do too. I was a little kid, and I remember my folks let me stay up late because I was a little kid obsessed with JFK even then, and they let me stay up late and watch it. I was like 6 years old. It was the only time I'd ever seen anything so graphic, so violent, so shocking. And that video is up on YouTube. Just look for Geraldo Rivera JFK, and it'll pop right up. But what's fascinating about it is when the film was played for the American people for the first time. Prior to that, they had only seen still photographs in Time Life, where they had taken selected stills from the Zapruder film and printed them in the magazine. But the film itself wasn't seen until that night, late at night, because it was obviously adult content. You wouldn't want to air that in prime time when kids are watching. But thankfully, I was a little kid, but my parents made an exception for me and let me stay up and watch. But you can hear an audible gasp from the studio audience when the headshot is shown.
Well, here's the thing on that, the coup de grace shot. That came from, you know how you have those drains on the curb, like where you have a steel drain and it's a sewer. Well, the guy that the final headshot, that was the side of his head that basically took the side of his head off, that was from in the sewer. So the guy is down.
I'm gonna have to disagree with you on that.
I don't believe that either.
I don't think the angle and the trajectory was correct to actually hit, but the sewers made a great escape hatch for the shooters, because there's a whole tunneling system underneath Dealey Plaza, and you can travel through the sewers behind. Let's say that the shooter was behind the grassy knoll fence. They could escape by car, but the best way to get out of Dealey Plaza unseen would be to walk right up. Some of you have probably been to Dealey Plaza. You can walk right up to that railroad bridge, and there's an entrance to the sewer system, a manhole. Just open the manhole, slither down there, and you can travel underneath Dealey Plaza all the way underneath the river, and you'll come out on the other side in Oak Cliff, which is, of course, where they found Lee Harvey Oswald and took him into custody.
Which Lee Harvey Oswald, Lee Harvey Oswald, the one thing you'll see where he's the patsy, he wasn't the guy that did it.
I think I'm going to bring this space to a close. It's been a really, really interesting conversation tonight. I appreciate everyone tuning in. Thank you. This space is being recorded. So if you missed it or you missed part of this 6-hour marathon and you want to go back and catch what we said at the beginning, you can go back and listen at any time. I think Twitter keeps these spaces up for 60 days. The recording will be available. And then after that, they just automatically delete it to save space on the servers, I guess. But I'll be taking this and I'll take the audio, turn it into a podcast, and I'll upload it to some other platforms. I'll put it up on my Rumble channel. It definitely will not be on YouTube because I know that they'll kill my channel if I put it on YouTube. So I'm just not going to put it on YouTube. But you can find it on my Rumble channel. I'll have it posted within a couple of days. And I just wanted to thank everyone once again. Wanted to thank my co-host, Anita Stewart, who I think has fallen asleep. I wanted to thank Kevin over there in Crimea. Thank you, brother. As we were all running out of gas here in the 6th hour, you showed up all bright-eyed and cheery first thing in the morning over in Russia and kind of saved the day for us. So once again, my hat's off to you. My hat's off to John Russell and to Jake and to Thomas and everybody else who participated here tonight. Most of all, my hat's off to Robert Kennedy for filing this lawsuit, for fighting the good fight, because this really is not just about him. It's about all of us. It's about the future of the free press. It's about freedom of speech. It's about the freedom for you to consume whatever type of news and information you want, wherever you want to hear it. If you want to hear it on YouTube, you should have the right to hear it on YouTube. And that's why we're fighting this fight. Again, I would encourage you to go to my profile at kennedy24.com/Lori Spencer. If you'd like to join my team of volunteers or make a donation or buy some cool Kennedy merchandise, get you some bumper stickers, get you some t-shirts. One of the best ways to fight censorship is to just get his name out there. Like I said earlier, so many Americans don't even know he's running for president because the media is making him the invisible man. And we have to make him visible. One of the best ways to do that is to slap a bumper sticker on your car or wear a t-shirt or fly a flag or, put a sign in your yard. You might be surprised that your neighbors take notice of it and go, oh, Kennedy? Which Kennedy's running for president? I mean, they really don't know he's even running. So that's one great way to start a conversation with people in your neighborhood. When you go out to the store, you go to an event, wear a Kennedy t-shirt. It's a conversation starter. People will stop you and say, hey, what's that t-shirt? Who's Kennedy? Where do I get one of those? I still think that the best way that we can win this race is the old-fashioned way. And that is face-to-face, shaking hands, signs, bumper stickers, t-shirts, flags, the good old patriotic American way, the way that we used to campaign before the internet. And I know we have a couple of generations now that have grown up in an era where everything is done on the internet, and they don't have any concept of the way that our parents and grandparents used to campaign, the way they did it back in JFK's day, in RFK's day. But most of our country, we were out winning elections and campaigning without a thing called the internet. So if we just look at it that way, we don't have to have the internet to win. It's a very important tool, but I think that there's much that we can do even without the internet. And there's so much to be said for just face-to-face contact and conversation with your neighbor. I think that's how you win hearts and minds. It's the best way to win hearts and minds, and it's pure, and it's soul to soul, heart to heart, hand to hand. So once again, I want to thank everybody who tuned in. And if you go to my, this is ironic that I'm closing out with a plug for my YouTube channel, but you can also watch it on my Rumble channel. If you go to Strange Bedfellows Podcast on YouTube, you'll see that last night's episode of Strange Bedfellows, we had a really interesting conversation about the Kennedy campaign with Nick Brana, who worked with the Bernie campaign and, of course, the Cornel West campaign. But he had some really interesting insights to share about what the Democratic Party did to Bernie Sanders and what he predicts they're going to do to Bobby Kennedy next year. And I think a lot of you would find that really interesting. So you can also watch it on my Rumble channel if you're boycotting YouTube. And if you are boycotting YouTube, good for you. That's exactly what we all should do as much as we possibly can. If there's something that you can watch on Rumble, if you have a choice, please do watch on Rumble or Twitter or any other platform that really does not censor people. So once again, everybody, thank you so much. And let's go all the way with RFK. And I will see you back here on another Twitter space very soon. Good night, everyone.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.